Hello and welcome back to a brand new episode of PHT TV. Today we're going to cover something that's been out for a little while, as well as something brand new. The Klipsch Sevens, which have been out for a little while now, and the Klipsch stands that were just recently released. I feel like the Sevens haven't really seen the attention they deserve. We see a lot of people jump to the 5s if they're looking for a more compact design, or if space is an issue, they immediately jump to the 9s, but these guys don't see as much action. I love the 5s, I love the 9s, but something about these 7s, they just are kind of this perfect blend, this perfect combination of power and aesthetic. So anyways, we'll come back to those. Let's go ahead and get these guys out of the way, because once we take them out of the box, we're gonna need somewhere to put them. So I'm gonna move the 7s out of the way, we're gonna get the stands out of the box, and we'll come back to the 7s. All right, here we have the KS-24 and the KS-28. Now, obviously the use of any stand is to pick your speakers up off the ground and get them to ear level. It's a fairly straightforward idea. That said, what sets these stands apart from other stands? There's actually quite a bit of difference, but before we discuss all that, I'm gonna go ahead and take these guys out of the box so you can kind of get eyes on them, follow along with the instructions, and assemble them so you guys can kind of see how they go together as well. So let's get them out of the box. All right, let's start with the KS-24. Now in that first pocket, we're gonna see our manual, which, like I said, I'm gonna be referring to this manual quite a bit during. I'm gonna follow the instructions exactly as opposed to just putting together like I normally would, because like I said, there has been some confusion in the instructions. So let's take a look here. And the first thing we're gonna have is our top plates, which are labeled B. And these are heavy duty, guys. Then we'll have our bottom plates. And our bottom plates are gonna be labeled C. And in here, these are gonna have our beams. So this is labeled A1. This is gonna be where we have all of our spike feet and our rubber feet, as well as our nuts and bolts. We're gonna set this one off to the side for a sec and get out our A2. Now I'm gonna put these guys back in here. So we're left with our manual, we're left with our parts, and then we're also left with our hardware box. All right, now, if we're gonna check our manual, this is kind of where we've been seeing the most trouble. So check that out. We have two of our A1s, which are here, 2 of our A2s, 2 of our Bs, 2 of our Cs, and in our box, this is where we get the most confusion. We have D1, which is the first thing noted, which is actually going to be this guy right here. Technically, this is D1. This one right here is gonna be our E. This one right here is gonna be our F. So while they come together, they're actually listed as 3 separate parts. So I'll highlight it here on the screen. So this right here, though it's together again, is our D1, our E, and our F. Then our D2 is gonna be our rubber feet. So if we're gonna use our rubber feet, we would take off D1 and swap it out for our rubber feet. I'm gonna pull in here and I will show it to you. All right, again, here's our spiked feet and here's our rubber feet. So all we're gonna do here, we're gonna take out the spike, take these same components and put your rubber foot where the spike foot was. Here's what it looks like if you're getting spiked. Here's what it looks like if you're getting rubber. So that accounts for 8 of our D1s, 8 of our D2s, 8 of our E's, and 8 of our F's. Now next we're gonna move on to our hardware packet with G, H, and I. This one's gonna be our G, H, and I. So we have our G, 8-pack of G, 8-pack H, 8-pack of I, and then J is gonna be listed as our Allen key here. And we also have a little wrench that's not really listed in the parts, but I'm sure it'll come in handy somewhere around here. And last but not least, we have our K, which is actually an additional Allen key, which has our nice Klipsch logo on it. It's also magnetic, so it will stick to the side of your stand. All right, again, that has been the most confusing part to some, is people will come out and say, I'm missing my E and my F. It is already assembled and attached to your D1 when you're looking at it. So first, before you go any further, you're gonna need to decide, do you want spike feet or do you want rubber feet? And I'm gonna use the rubber on this set. So we will grab our C, our seat, and we're gonna do this twice for each because we have 2 stands. So we're gonna need our D1, our E, and our F. Now, like I said, we're going with rubber. So we are going to actually take the spikes out, and pull out our rubber feet and replace them with our rubber feet. To start, you're actually just going to put the rubber feet onto part E. Then this guy is what's going to close it onto the back. So I'm going to insert this through here and then thread it on there. Now if you need to level, you can actually unscrew this and then adjust accordingly and move these down. And you can use these to level as well and then tighten here if you need to. For our purposes, I'm actually just going to go fully in all the way across. All right, I'm going to put this in fast forward and skip this part because you've seen it once, you've seen it enough. So, all right, there we have our bottoms assembled. Now, I do recommend putting these in, putting your spikes, or if you're keeping your spikes, putting your rubbers into a separate baggie or something so that you have them for later, because it is nice to have those if you do change rooms or if you move the stands or something to that effect. So make sure you do set those aside somewhere for future use. Now, next in our manual, it is going to say to put our A1 and A2 onto our stands. So this is going to be C. So basically the only thing you want to make note of here is that on A2, the difference is that it's going to have that slot that runs all the way up to the back and comes out here. The reason for this is that is to hide your speaker wire. So we're going to want to make sure that our A2, goes over the hole there. And our A1 does not have a hole. Then we're going to take our H, which is in our hardware box here. We're going to take out our packets of H and we're going to screw these guys on here. If you have a socket wrench at home, you'll probably be able to do this a little easier, but just to show that no additional tools are required, I'm going to go ahead and use this guy. Some of you may also choose to not do this until all screws are in. It may make the top half a little easier to assemble, but with them being as long as they are, it shouldn't make that big of a difference there. I'm going to set it up, and this is what we have so far. This is going to be the back. As you can see, we have a hole in the bottom, which we're going to discuss this a little bit more. We have a hole in the bottom to run your cables up and route them through the back. As I've already done, we're going to flip it upright, and then we are going to install our top plate. Now our top plate is going to use our G's, which are here. One other thing I want to make a note of before I put this back in there is that the design of the screw, the design of the bolt, is meant to sink inside of here. So you want to make sure that it does. If you have it upside down, it will not. You'll see that when I put this in there like this, it sinks so it's flush. If we had this backwards, it would not be. So just take note of that when you're putting them in. This should be flush and actually kind of countersunk in there a bit. And here's where your Allen wrench is going to come in handy. Now before you crank these guys down, I would recommend getting all 4 at least started here. So that's what we look like now. Okay, now you may be asking, what are the eyes for? I'll tell you in a bit. We'll set those aside and we'll come back to the eyes. The only other thing I'm going to go into here before we get back to just going over specs and stuff is what this wrench is for. So essentially what you're going to do is you're going to throw a level on top here, and you can turn this and use this guy to level your speakers. So you can go up and down. There is a little keyhole in there so that you can actually level them and get them perfectly level. Move on to the next one. Like I said, if you guys have a socket wrench at home, use that. Like I said, I'm just doing this guy to show that no additional tools are required. But it's just like putting together a grill or really anything you buy at the store. If you have your own tools at home, it'll make it a lot easier and it'll tighten down a lot better. There we have our KS-24s. KS-24s assembled. Now, I'm gonna set these off to the side. I'm also gonna leave my eyes out and I'll show you why later. All right, now let's unbox KS-28s. All right, now these are the KS-28s and assembly is going to be identical. I'm not gonna have you guys sit through it all over again. I'm gonna fast forward here. The only difference I'm gonna make on the 28s versus the 24s is that I am going to use the spike feet instead of the rubber feet. All right, so here they are out of the box and assembled. Pretty quick and easy to throw these guys together. Now, as promised, let's go ahead and talk about what sets these guys apart, what makes them different than other stands on the market, and why you may need certain stands depending on your environment. Now, personally, my biggest concern, and I think a lot of us share this concern, is I spent a lot of money. I put a lot of money into my speaker setups, and I don't want them set up and to have them knocked over and destroyed. I have kids, I have animals, I myself can be sometimes pretty clumsy, so I want something that will hold up. With stands, you tend to get what you pay for. First off, let's talk about weight, as it is fairly important. A lot of the cheaper stands, they look nice, but they have minimal weight to them. These guys do not have that problem at all. There's quite a bit of weight to them. Now, not just the weight of the stand itself is what's important though. The weight and the location of the weight is important to the design. Not only do you want to keep it heavy, but you also want to keep that weight as low as possible to give it a lower center of gravity. Additionally, you want your feet and your stance to sit equal or wider to the speaker sitting on it. The larger base plate accomplishes these tasks. It's heavy, it sits out wide enough to accommodate even the really large bookshelves, giving it a really nice stance. Now, with stance mentioned, let's go ahead and go down a bit further and talk about the feet themselves. I'm gonna take off one of my cameras here and show this close up. Let's tilt these backwards. So on the 28s, I've put the spike feet, and on the 24s, I put the rounded feet. Now, the last two things that I'm going to discuss on these, I do need a speaker to show off. As such, let's go ahead and crack the Sevens out of the box. Now, this is not going to be the first time that these particular Sevens have come out of the box. To give you a better first look, let's go ahead and show the Klipsch unboxing video, and when you come back, I'll have these guys out of the box as well. All right, so that was the Klipsch unboxing. I got these guys out while we were gone. That may or may not also be me in that other video. But now that these are out of the box, let's take a look at something else unique about these stands. If you look at the bottom of the Sevens, you'll see that they have threaded inserts. These are actually designed so that you can place the Sevens on top here and actually bolt them to the stand. So let's take a look at that. I'm gonna set this guy on the side here. So we have threaded inserts on the bottom of the speaker, which allows us to bolt them to the stands. Now, that also answers the question that we had earlier. What is bolt eye for? The bolt eye is actually going to allow you to bolt the speakers to the stands. So let's go ahead and mount these guys onto the stand and you'll see what I'm talking about. One more thing I'm going to show you real quick. Looking right at these stands here, you'll see that the threaded inserts are not in the same location. So when we're looking at the Sevens, we're going to want to use the shorter stands. When we're looking at the 9s, we're going to want to use the shorter stands. When we're looking at the 5s, that's when we're going to come into these guys. So you want to raise it a little higher because the speaker isn't as tall and it puts the tweeter at a lower level. All right, first thing we're going to do, put this guy on the stand. And you're going to want to take a look from underneath and line up the screw holes. Once those screw holes are lined up, you can start putting in your screws. Now I'm going to finger tighten them at first. You'll want to make sure that they go straight in order to avoid cross threading. Then once you have them finger tightened, you go back and you get your tool and you tighten them all the way. And rinse and repeat with this guy. Well, there you go. They are mounted. All right, so concern one is going to be the whole speaker and stand toppling over. You can combat that with having a heavy duty stand, and the keyword there being heavy. Concern two is going to be the speaker falling off of the stand. You bolt the speaker to the stand and that's not happening. And when you have threaded inserts built into the products, you don't have to harm the speakers to accomplish this feat. You don't have to harm the speakers, you don't have to drill into the bottom of the speakers. They're designed in a way that you can just bolt them on there and they're good to go. Now, lastly on stands, let's talk about our cable runs. Typically we use cable ties, we attach them to the back of the stands, and we just clean it up as much as humanly possible. But on these, your cable management is actually built into the stand itself. So no cable ties, no anything needed. So I'm gonna grab the cord real quick and show you how that function works. Now, any of these cable management systems, I always recommend running the largest cable first. The smaller cables are always gonna be easier to run. So our largest cable is typically gonna be our power cable. So I'm gonna run from the bottom up and fish this wire through here. And you can also do this before you mount the speaker on there if you so choose, but it is totally up to you which route you want to go. And the larger the cable, the trickier it can be. So you just want to be patient here when fishing it through. Next, we're going to have our speaker cable. So we'll do the same here. Run our speaker cable through. And last but not least, we're going to take our HDMI cable. And now we have our HDMI cable in there as well. We'll pick up the speaker, and then next, plug everything in. So we're gonna start with this guy, and then you can see this is kind of obtrusive, kind of in the way here. So next what we're gonna wanna do is we're gonna go from the bottom and pull to tighten these up. Not too much, just kind of enough. So there is your wire runs. Just having this wire run included in the system is amazing. I do have one more test that I wanna do with these stands, so stick around to the end and check that out. But first, let's talk about the sevens. The 5s and the 9s have gotten a ton of attention because they're the biggest and the smallest in the line, the most compact, the biggest and the baddest in the line. The 7s, I think though, are my favorite. Perfect kind of combination, perfect kind of blend of the two aspects. They're medium sized and still pack plenty of punch. Before we go any further though, let's talk specs. They measure 16.38 inches by 8.13 by 10.88 inches. As for weight, the primary is going to come in at 22.3 pounds and the secondary is going to come in at 19.9 pounds. So for those of you guys that don't know or aren't very familiar with the 7s or the 5s or anything in this powered monitor series, basically what we're looking at is this is going to be the secondary. If I turn it around, you'll see there's a single input. Whereas on the primary, you have all of your inputs, you have your amp, and then you have an output to go to the secondary, which is actually going to power your speakers. Now, one thing that you may be concerned about is my power outlet's on my right, and typically the primary is gonna be the left. Let me show you something real quick. If that is a concern of yours, we actually have a primary switch here. So if your primary is on the left, you leave it on L. If your primary is on the right, you switch it to right. So you're not gonna mess up your left-right or your channel separation. You're not gonna have the wrong channel in the wrong location. Now let's talk about inputs real quick while we're on this back panel. We have our RCA inputs here, and we could switch that between phono and line. We have our aux input, so if you have a headphone jack, or if you're just plugging like a iPod or something to that effect in it, you can do that right there. Then we have our sub out, so you can actually attach a subwoofer if you feel like you're not getting enough low frequencies. We have our optical port, so you can plug it right into the back of your TV. We have our HDMI part, which we've already used to show the connection setup there. So if you're using it on a desktop and want to connect it to your computer, you can do that as well through USB. Down lower, we have our ground for turntables and whatever you may need that ground for. Then we have our secondary speaker out right there, which is currently in use, our power switch, and our power input. Then on the other side, we just have our single port. So all of your controls are going to be on the main unit with the amp. So anyways, that's what gives it that additional weight, is having the amp on this side and the secondary not having that amp on there. Now, as for drivers, I'm going to go ahead and turn this around so we can talk about that. You are going to have the same 1-inch vented titanium tweeter as we have in the 5s and the 9s, so in both of the other models in the line. But as for the woofer, we're going to have a 6.5-inch driver as opposed to the 4.5 on the 5s and the 8-inch on the 9s. Now the smaller size driver and the smaller form factor does mean you're not going to dip quite as low in your frequency range as the 9s do, which the 9s get down to 34 Hertz, but honestly I still feel like it does super well, getting down to 39 Hertz, which for the size I feel is still super impressive. And not only do they dig that deep, but they do it well. They do it smoothly. So you're going to get the smaller form factor and still get some pretty low frequencies, and if you do not get enough bass, if you feel like you're not quite getting enough low frequencies, you can always use that sub out and get yourself a subwoofer to put under the desk as well. All that said, sound, size, that's going to be your big factors that change between the 5s, the 7s, and the 9s. As for appearances, they share a lot of the same characteristics. Super easy setup, beautiful design, premium switches and knobs and materials, virtually every connection you can think of around back. Just overall an awesome line of speakers and an awesome set of speakers right here in the middle of the lines. Now, we've made this video pretty long already, but I do want to do one more thing. I want to have some fun with these in a semi-controlled environment and see just how much force it takes to knock them over. I can talk a bunch, but let's do some real life tests and really drive the point home. Check this out. All right, so here is my fun test. Basically what I want to do is I want to see at what angle is this speaker going to tip over. Now, I've made kind of a makeshift catcher there. Let's see when we get a tip. We're still good there. That's when it would fall over. Now, additionally, how much force did it take to get us there? And if we just tip on it, is it gonna go anywhere? Doesn't seem to. Now, I would say if a cat jumped on that, it would be just fine. If a dog kind of runs, ow, that was dumb. If a dog kind of runs into it, it's gonna be fine. Kid runs into it, it's gonna be fine. You almost have to want this thing to fall over. Ugh. Now, if we were to kick it, nothing. You're gonna have to take a pretty good hit directly on the top where all the weight of the speaker is. If something low runs into it, like a dog, cat, anything like that, it's just gonna move. Now this is by no means any kind of real test. This is mostly just for fun, but. So basically what I'm seeing here is you would have to hit it pretty significantly as high up as possible in order to knock this guy over. All right, I think that is about all the fun we can have for one day, guys. We have unboxed and built stands. We have unboxed the Sevens. We've mounted the Sevens to the stands. We've shown you how to do the cable runs to make them perfectly, nicely, beautifully run. That's about all I have for you today, guys. Who's ready to pick up your very own set of Sevens, or your very own set of KS-24s, or your very own set of KS-28s? Paducah Home Theater has all three products in stock and ready to ship. So give Paducah Home Theater a call or check them out on the website to pick up your very own set today. And once you get them home, once you get them in your house, tell us what you think in the comments. I'd be curious to hear you guys' perspective as well. Additionally, please hit that like and subscribe button below and click the little bell next to it to enable notifications to stay up to date on new releases as soon as they drop. More content coming your way soon. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you again soon for another episode of PHT TV. There they go. They don't like to stand up on their own.